In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus gave a chilling warning about the end times. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. His words have never been more relevant than they are today. We are living in a world that seems to be teetering on the edge of chaos, as the reality of wars and the looming threat of even greater conflict envelops us. We are witnessing wars, rumors of wars, civil unrest, and the fracturing of nations on a scale not seen in recent memory. This is a state of emergency, and it is critical that we as Christians understand the significance of what is happening in light of biblical prophecy. A simple glance at the headlines is enough to see that the prophecy of Jesus is unfolding before our very eyes. The ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine has captured the world's attention. What started as a geopolitical conflict has escalated into something that feels much bigger. Just recently, it was reported that North Korea is preparing to deploy up to 12,000 troops to support Russia in the Ukraine conflict.
South Korea's spy agency says that North Korea is sending troops to support Russia's war against Ukraine. The agency says at least 1,500 North Korean special forces are training in far eastern Russia, with thousands more to be deployed.
This move brings a third nation into the fray, further complicating a war that already has global repercussions. This development reminds us that alliances between nations can pull the world into even greater conflict. It's important to remember that the leaders of North Korea and Russia met earlier this year, and their meeting literally went viral when the pair showcased the close ties between the two nations. This public display of unity was more than just a diplomatic handshake. It was a clear signal to the world that alliances are being strengthened, particularly in times of conflict. Moreover, consider the recent tensions in the South China Sea, where China has escalated its military dominance. Chinese President Xi Jinping has been urging China's armed forces to ramp up their preparedness for war. The military drills conducted around Taiwan in 2024 alone, particularly the large-scale exercises Joint Sword 2024A in May and Joint Sword 2024B in October, are clear indications of China's readiness for conflict.
All right, moving on. Chinese President Xi Jinping is escalating his push for military dominance, urging China's armed forces to ramp up their preparedness for war.
Even here at home, there are rumors of civil war. Politics has divided our nation, and the rumors of internal conflict are louder than they have been in generations. According to a recent Marist poll, 47% of Americans believe that it is likely or very likely that the U.S. will experience another civil war in their lifetime. This belief is divided along partisan lines, with 53% of Republicans and 40% of Democrats holding this view. Additionally, younger generations, such as Gen Z and Millennials, 58%, are much more likely to believe in the possibility of a civil war compared to older generations. The seeds of division have been sown, and they are bearing the bitter fruit of hatred and animosity. As we turn our gaze to Israel, we see that the nation is fighting on multiple fronts, engaged in conflicts that seem to have no end. These wars are not just geopolitical, they are spiritual, and they demand our attention as Christians, because Israel is central to the unfolding of the end times. Israel holds a central role in the unfolding of end-time events. The Antichrist will sign a peace treaty with Israel, marking the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. Halfway through the tribulation, the Antichrist will exalt himself as God in a rebuilt temple in Israel. The two witnesses will prophesy in Jerusalem for 1,260 days. Israel will face an invasion led by Gog and Magog, but God will miraculously intervene to save his people. Jesus will return to the Mount of Olives in Israel, defeating the Antichrist and establishing his millennial kingdom. The Battle of Armageddon will take place in Israel. where the armies of the world will gather. After the millennium, the New Jerusalem will descend from heaven, establishing God's eternal kingdom. It is crucial to pay attention to what happens in Israel, as these events will shape the final chapter of world history. The doomsday clock, a symbolic measure of how close humanity is to a global catastrophe, is set at 90 seconds to midnight as of 2024, the closest it has ever been. Created by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists in 1947, the clock serves as a warning system for the world, alerting us to the existential threats that could bring about a global disaster. Initially, the clock was set to reflect the threat of nuclear annihilation, but over the decades it has come to symbolize much more. Today, it takes into account the risks posed by biological warfare and emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. Each year, a group of scientists and experts recalibrates the clock based on the state of global affairs. And in 2024, they placed us at the brink of catastrophe with 90 seconds to midnight. As tensions rise across the globe, the question that looms large is this: will there be a World War III? While the Bible does not explicitly state that a third world war will occur, it does give us reason to believe that the world will experience great tribulation before the return of Christ. Some speculate that the Antichrist may stop a potential World War III. However, the Bible does not say this explicitly. What we do know is that the Antichrist will come as a man of peace. In Daniel 9:27, we read that he will make a covenant with many for 1 week, which could signify a peace treaty. It is possible that the Antichrist may intervene in global conflicts, presenting himself as the solution to the world's problems. 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 9 and 10 tells us that he will come with power, signs, and lying wonders to deceive those who do not love the truth. Could he be the one to broker peace in a world on the verge of war? It is a plausible scenario, but one we must approach with caution. It is important to consider the evolution of weaponry when discussing the potential for World War III. The wars of the 20th century, World War I and World War II, were fought with weaponry that was relatively primitive compared to what we have today. World War I was marked by trench warfare, mustard gas, and machine guns. World War II saw the introduction of tanks, aircraft, and more advanced technology, but even then, the level of destruction was nothing compared to what is possible today. The weaponry of the modern era is drastically different. Today we have precision-guided munitions, drones, cyber warfare, and nuclear weapons far more powerful than those used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
In the 50s, once thermonuclear weapons were invented, and a thermonuclear weapon is essentially a thermonuclear weapon is so powerful, it uses an atomic bomb like from Hiroshima as its triggering mechanism.
The destructive power of today's arsenal is so great that I personally do not believe there will be a full-scale World War III that involves nuclear weapons before the Antichrist arrives. Nuclear weapons now are so powerful, so much more powerful than we can imagine. When the Antichrist does come, however, he may very well present himself as a man who can prevent global war. He will offer peace, but it will be a false peace, a temporary reprieve that will ultimately lead to destruction. 1 Thessalonians 5:3 warns us that when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. The peace offered by the Antichrist will be fleeting, and those who follow him will find themselves trapped in the coming judgment. I have to stress it is a plausible scenario. The Antichrist will be an unusual and extremely unique being. Look at the Bible's description of how the Antichrist will rise as a man of peace. I sometimes wonder how the Antichrist will unite the world in peace and lead it to accept him alone as its leader. Just look at your world. There is so much strife and hate. See how much division exists in the world. How on earth will one individual manage to unite the world to follow his leadership and rule? The fact that the world will unite under the leadership of this one man should reveal several things, one of which is the level of deception and the sheer power of the Antichrist's influence. When in history has all of mankind listened and obeyed the rule of one man? When in history has the world come together in peace under the rule of one man? When in history has the world viewed one man as God? When in history have people put aside their social political ideologies to follow one man? When in history has all of mankind put their religious beliefs aside to worship one man? When in history has the entire world been required to bear a mark or symbol as a means of allegiance to a single leader? When in history has there been a global economic system so tightly controlled that buying and selling are impossible without allegiance to one ruler? When in history has a leader been able to perform miraculous signs and wonders on such a scale that they deceive nations? When in history has a single political figure managed to broker peace in the Middle East, particularly between Israel and its neighbors? When in history has a leader risen with such charisma and authority that their rule is accepted across diverse and often conflicting cultural boundaries? The Bible tells us when in history this takes place, and that is in Revelation chapter 13. We grossly underestimate the pure and sheer supernatural deception that will occur during the rise of the Antichrist. What he will do is nothing short of supernatural. It will not be a natural accomplishment. But we know that he will not naturally accomplish this, for we know he is given his power by the dragon, and he is energized by the very gates of hell itself. In light of all this, how should we respond? What can we as Christians do in this state of emergency? First and foremost, we must not be afraid. Jesus warned us that these things would happen, but he also told us not to be troubled. Matthew 24:6 says, "See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." The wars, rumors of wars, and global conflicts are part of the end-time events that must unfold before Christ's return. Rather than living in fear, we should live with hope and expectation, knowing that our redemption is drawing near. In this world, woven with threads of uncertainty and tension, where the fabric of peace seems to be unraveling, I come to you with a message of unshakable assurance. God is still on his throne. Yes, in the midst of global unrest, in the face of threats and fears, let us remember this foundational truth. God is still on the throne. Do not behave like unbelievers who fear the future. There is a God who cares about you and who is in control of the future. We, as human beings, may be caught off guard by world events. We may be blindsided by them, but God is not. He knows everything that is unfolding everywhere. He knows the plans of wicked men and women all across the world. And this same God is concerned about you and your life. What are you scared of? What are you fearing? I would be more concerned if Jesus had not specifically told us that in the last days there will be wars and rumors of wars, but he warned us. So I ask you again, what are you scared of? The God who knows the future is on your side. Do not fear in these last days. Think about it. When John the Baptist baptized Jesus in the river, and that voice from heaven declared, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased," God was on his throne. And even when John the Baptist faced his tragic end, beheaded for his unwavering faith, God was still reigning supremely. God is still on the throne. This truth, my brothers and sisters, is our anchor in the storm. As we navigate through these times that the Bible has warned us about, times filled with wars, rumors of wars, nations rising against nations, and kingdoms against kingdoms, let us hold on to this truth. God is still on the throne. We might be living in what seems like the beginning of sorrows, an era that looks like the unfolding events of the book of Revelation. But even then, even when the Antichrist takes center stage in human civilization, I need you to know, I need you to believe, I need you to hold on to this. God is still on the throne. In your personal life, when disaster strikes, when your world seems to crumble, when you feel all alone, remember this: God is still on the throne. His sovereignty is not dependent on our circumstances. His reign is not determined by the chaos of this world. His power is not diminished by the schemes of man or the rise of any Antichrist. No, God is still on the throne. You see, things do not have to turn out the way we think they ought to for God to be sovereign. His ways are higher than our ways, His thoughts higher than our thoughts. When we cannot trace His hand, we must trust His heart. Even in the midst of turmoil, even when the nations are in uproar, God is still on the throne. Our focus should not be solely on the prophetic fulfillments, not just on the ticking of the clock towards the end times. Our focus should be on the one who holds time in His hands, the one who sits above all the earth, the one who is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. God is still on the throne. So do not be troubled. Do not let your heart be weighed down by fear. Do not look at the chaos of the world and despair. Instead, look to God, who is unchanging, steadfast, and sovereign. Look to God, whose love for us was so great that He sent His only Son to save us. Look to God, who has promised never to leave us nor forsake us. In every moment, in every situation, in every high and every low, let this be your declaration. Let this be your faith. Let this be your unwavering conviction. God is still on the throne.